Welcome to yet another exciting episode of Voices of Vayana. Today, we're thrilled to host Naresh Khalasi, the engineering head at Vayana. With nearly 3 decades of industry experience, Naresh is a powerhouse in software architecture and engineering management. He has an impressive track record of building and scaling FinTech SaaS platforms by integrating customer empathy with sound engineering practices, DevOps methodologies, and a focus on security and compliance. Naresh has been instrumental in transforming Vayana's technical operations, establishing a strong feedback loop from various ops teams, and driving innovation in platform and product engineering. His passion for programming and commitment to delivering the right tech solutions make him an inspiring leader who believes in balancing high-quality work with work-life harmony. Naresh's diverse past experiences span software delivery and equipment lending, ITIL, and prime brokerage, bringing a wealth of knowledge to the table. Thank you so much for joining us today, Naresh. Let's get started.
Thank you, Akshay.
So, Naresh, to start off, let's go a little bit into your journey and you. Could you share a bit about your background and how you came to be a part of Vayana's FinTech journey?
Sure. So initially when I started with the services industry. So it was all about identifying a new project, new customer, new project, identifying the technology required, starting with a fresh team and moving on once the delivery is done, moving on to the next set of projects or problem statement, right? It was almost after about 15 years that I bumped into Vayana, where it was about product development. Since I had never done product development, it was an exciting opportunity for me. And from there on, I have stuck to product and with Vayana.
Oh, very interesting, Naresh. So, can you tell us a little bit about when you started whiteboarding Vayana's first product? What were some of the critical pain points that you might have identified for customers? And did you uncover anything very unexpected in those early conversations?
Right. So the good thing about Vayana was that Mr. Iyer and Mr. Danny, these are the two gentlemen who started the journey for Vayana, right? And I was the first engineer on the team. So they made a very powerful goal setting by making two very simple statements. One is that we want to do something or we want to build something that impacts the GDP of the country. Second is that we want to be like the courier company in the world of credit and payment, right? And by that, they meant that, if you imagine a courier line of business, customers don't need to really know, how your couriers or how your shipments move around. And especially for the corporate world, it's all about, not knowing where that courier company has a branch or office. It's all about, making the experience non-intrusive for the customers. And when it came to Vayana, we wanted to give the same experience. And that's where the first problem statement that we identified was, how do we create a seamless solution that does not expect the users to change anything at their end in terms of preparing the invoices to be presented for finance. So that was the first problem statement. Second problem statement was that we wanted to democratize this process, and hence, instead of making it a single party request process, we wanted both the buyers and sellers to participate in that request. So typically what happens in a supply chain financing is the seller would raise an invoice. It needs to be presented to the bank for financing. Depending on the arrangement, either the seller will take the invoice to the bank and get it financed, in which case the dealer is going to be debited on his loan account and the money will be disbursed to the beneficiary, which is the seller, right? And that's what most people do because it speeds up the process of financing or making the funds accessible for the seller. However, it leaves the SMEs, especially the buyer SMEs, at a slight disadvantage because they don't get an opportunity to say yes or no on a particular invoice which is being financed. And that was the second problem statement.
Got it. So, Naresh, there's this whole discussion on identifying alpha customers and how that's very important. So, how did you go about that? And how did you identify the alpha customers and what made them the right choice for validating your ideas?
Right. So identifying alpha customers is always important. In some cases, it will be more important. In some cases, it will be less important. But alpha customers give you an opportunity to collect early feedback of your product ideas, right? For us, it was very, very important because when we started building the platform, cloud was very, very new. We were the early adopters of AWS, and hence data privacy and security was something that people uh, did not have confidence in, outsourcing to an external agency, right? So everybody was used to data centers managed by themselves. Second aspect was that there was nobody else in the market who was already doing this same business in the platform. As a platform, not in the platform, as a platform, right? Supply chain financing is a centuries old concept, but in the digital world, there was hardly anybody who was doing it, especially in India. So it was very important for us to identify the first set of customers or participants, which is the right term, a strong seller who would believe in our concept, a set of buyers who would want to, who were excited about adopting technology to increase their efficiencies of operations, and a bank who was willing to take a leap of faith and give us an opportunity to present the platform and try out the concept.
Got it. So, Naresh, you did mention lean product when while answering the previous question. So, I wanted to ask, how did you balance the need for a lean product while also ensuring enough functionality to meet the customer's expectations?
Right. So, one of the challenges of supply chain financing is that, and especially when you are doing a SaaS platform, software as a service platform, that you're building a SaaS product for an enterprise audience. And enterprise audience is used to, always evaluate if you're paying a certain amount of fees to use a service. What is the set of features that you are getting, right? So one aspect is, which is normalized, saying, there is a problem statement. What is the minimum steps you need to achieve the solution towards that problem statement or solve that problem statement? The other one is, I am a customer, I am paying money for it. So I want to justify that amount of money that I'm paying, right? So there is always a need to strike a balance. Essentially, what do you build to remain relevant to the users who are going to use your solution? Second, how do you build enough features into it so that during your sales cycles, you can help the sales team to convince the relevant stakeholders or the decision making stakeholders to accept your solution?
Sure, Naresh, that helps. So, Naresh, I know that outside of this podcast, you have mentioned on how there was this PDF and Excel parser. So, that did sound like a forward thinking move, especially since that was done pre AI. So, what exactly inspired you to prioritize that? And how did it impact onboarding customers with, minimal change management?
Yeah. So if you were to imagine a large customer using SAP versus a medium customer who is using something like a QuickBook or a Tally, both these systems will give you an invoice report in very, very different formats, right? And let's say you as a customer are working with multiple banks, and each bank wants that same piece of information in different formats. It becomes a lot more harder for you to create so many representations of the form of the data or invoice data and figure out which format should go into which bank. So what we did is we identified this as our first challenge or the first goal, saying that we want to give a near zero change management experience. And hence we said that, you give us your format, we'll figure out how to write a definition for that format so that the system can automatically pull data elements out of it from various locations within that file. That file can be an Excel file, it can be a PDF file, it can be an image, but we consciously kept the image out of scope, knowing that there will be issues in terms of getting digitally signed acceptance of those images and things like that.
Got it. So during this whole process of building MVP and validation, I definitely feel like there might be some initial missteps. So, could you tell us a little bit if there were some missteps? What were the lessons kind of learned there?
Right. So there are always missteps. Point is how fast you can learn and recover from those missteps. However, when we went or we were preparing to go live, there were a lot of learnings for us, both on the tech front as well as on the product front. So to give you an example, on the tech front, we were doing cloud for the first time. The team was very small, experienced, but the team was doing infrastructure management for the first time or being owner of the infrastructure for the first time, right? So one of the incidents I remember is as soon as we set up our test environment, it got hacked by a Chinese hacker immediately, like in less than half an hour, and that pushed us to take a step back, go back, learn about system administration, securing your infrastructure, set it up all over again, and move on to the next set of responsibility, right? So that's an example of missteps on the technology front. On the product front, we came up with a certain idea about how we will educate the users about managing which invoices have been accepted, which invoices have not been accepted. And this process, while there was an agent which makes the process easy to sign or accept a digitally accepted set of invoices, but the process of figuring out which invoices are yet to be accepted, which invoices should be deferred for acceptance, which invoices are already accepted, that process was laid down based on a particular discipline to be followed as part of your mailbox notification. And the first customer or first user that we ran into knew how to use email, but didn't know what is the discipline about using a mailbox. And that gave us a very strong learning saying, if we want to be successful, we have to be far more non-intrusive, because while we said that we won't have to be non-intrusive, but bringing in a mailbox in the discipline process was again sort of an intrusion. And that was a product learning for us saying this won't work. We need to work harder on creating a solution which is a lot more seamless, lot more natural for our.
I'm sure, Naresh. So I'm kind of going back to something you mentioned about, you were working on it and the testing environment got hacked in less than half an hour, you said. So that must have really been a wake-up call. So I want to know how the team responded to this and what steps did you then take to build a stronger security foundation?
So we were lucky that we were able to understand that the machine was hacked. I mean, a lot of times it happens that your machine or your assets are hacked, but you get to know only after a few days or after a few months, right? So in this case, we were lucky that as soon as we set up the machine, and probably because we were setting up the machine and we were curious about, what's happening in the machine. And we were just in general going about looking at, did we do the right steps in terms of setting up the machines and things like that. So we probably got the indicators very, very fast that, it has already been hacked. But then, as soon as we had that experience. It was a natural reaction to take a step back, go back to our learning process. So far we were only learning a new set of technology stacks to build a solution. Now we have to go back and learn about how to manage your infrastructure, how to manage your servers. What does it mean when somebody says your servers need to be secure? So we did spend a good, 10, 15 days going back to the basics, learning a lot of stuff which we had never done in the past. Come up with a process. It was still manual process, but come up with a process and recreate the same test environment using a different set of principles. And then from there on, it was a journey where it was about optimizing the process. So we started bringing in a lot of documentation. Then we started bringing in a lot of automation. Then we started recreating the nature of automation so that it can become more and more developer independent. So it was a natural evolution journey for us.
Got it. So Naresh, given your experience, what advice would you give to other fintech startups about cloud adoption and ensuring their architectures are both scalable and secure?
Okay, that's a difficult one because every product organization, every engineering organization would have a very different DNA. But if you are to normalize the requirements of building a scalable architecture, especially on the cloud, the first thing would be to figure out, do you want to throw away the initial creation after a few months of iterations and collecting your learnings? If that's the case, go with something that your team is most comfortable with, start building it and start your iterations to collect your feedback. But once you take that decision, you also have to start the journey towards identifying what is going to be the end state of your architecture and how are you going to prepare in terms of either creating teams or setting up R&D roadmaps or setting up procurement roadmaps in terms of what services or what tools you're going to use and things like that. When it comes to cloud, Luckily, there is a lot of information already available, both from the cloud providers as well as from the community. Should not be a big deal. However, one thing that one needs to keep in mind is don't create an architecture thinking that you will be able to sustain that for the next 10 years. Build an architecture for the next 1 year or for the next 2 years, because you don't know whether your projections are going to go the way you're thinking. It could go in some other directions, and then if you make a decision, that's going to be costly because you projected something for a 10-year kind of a requirement. It will be very difficult to roll back and create something new. When it comes to security, this is a very specialized area. I learned it the hard way, but it is best to bring in an expert from day one, right? Especially an expert who has the same set of principles that are aligned with your style of working on the engineering front.
Got it, Naresh, with you. So, Naresh, again, how did these early challenges in the production environments shape your approach to automated testing and continuous integration? So what is the secret to scaling these processes?
Okay, so there is no secret. It's a lot of hard work to first practice it yourself. Second, to teach to your fellow team members. Third, continuous review to ensure that you are not letting go of that. And essentially, that falls into this philosophy of shift left, right? So if you look at a software development lifecycle, right, historically people have created dedicated roles. There will be one role which focuses on creating requirements, detailing out requirements. Second role, which focuses on just translating those requirements into design. Third one, which translates the design into implementation. Then somebody who does validation of the implementation. Then somebody who does deployments or releases, right? And the point about shift left is, whatever you're doing on the extreme left, if you can start doing part of it or full of it, on the extreme right, if you can start doing some of it or all of it towards your right, left end of the spectrum, you will get far more benefits. So one of the things that we did is that we didn't want so many roles and titles in the team. Second, we did not want to create a culture where I feel happy about doing what I was told and let somebody else figure out where am I making mistakes, right? And typically this is what hurts when there is one team or one member who does the development and there is a separate team member who is supposed to test and identify the mistakes that you have done, right? And my favorite example is I ask people, my engineers, right? Have you ever found an electrician or a plumber who would say, I've done my work, now you go and check it, right? And if you cannot accept that kind of a person for a job like electrical problem or a plumbing problem, why would you do that for a software developer? So that's how we set up the culture. And then automation was an answer to bringing in efficiencies because we always wanted to remain a small team. We always wanted to do a lot of fast iterations, do a lot of changes, but do a lot of small changes and keep putting them in front of the customer.
Sure, Naresh. So, of course, there's so much more to really discuss, but in the interest of time, I will just go to this last question. So I want to understand what are the key security measures that FinTech platforms and specifically FinTech platforms like Vayana in this space must prioritize today, given the rise of AI and extremely sophisticated threats too.
So, like you said, this is a vast area. So it's going to be very difficult to comprehend what is it that you should focus on. But first thing, focus on your data. Is your data safe, right? And there are multiple levels at which you will have to think about data and keeping it safe. So, for example, I have a system which is created using all the right principles, security principles. My data is not accessible from outside without having proper credentials, without having proper keys and things like that. But we miss out on simple things, right? We deliver reports to mailboxes, and those mailboxes could get hijacked. They could get, corrupted. They could get leaked. Your laptops, when you travel, you could forget in a hotel or in an airport, right? So now you have to start thinking about, I am giving an asset to my employee and that employee travels a lot. What happens if he or she manages to lose that asset? You need to think about data security, right? Now, this level of security thought process is different than what a software developer would think about when he's building his system, right? Same thing about, when I'm integrating with my customers, I do have a particular set of security principles, and I would, as much as possible, I would want not to compromise on that. But what if your customer comes back and insists on a solution which he thinks is good from a security perspective, but it is not good? Now you have a difficult choice to make. Do you go reason with him, argue with him, or do you just blindly go and build something that he wants because your sales team is saying, I want this getting into production fast because I want to start getting those revenues realized, right? Now, this level of thought process on security is going to be different. So when it comes to compliance and security, it's about picking each incident one by one, figuring out where is it impacting you, figuring out what is the right solution approach that should be applied, and then figuring out what is the most pragmatic way to solve it.
Sure, Naresh. Thank you so much, really, for sharing all of your insights with us, your experiences. It's been very enriching, and it's been lovely talking to you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Akshaya.
And thanks to our listeners for tuning in too. See you soon.